Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Candland. We're going to be talking about 3 different quotes that changed how I live my life, how I see my life. Basically, on the show, we help people to build up their self-care, see the world a little differently, maybe build in some habits that will help them to create their best life, possibly create a business. So today, we're going to be talking about these 3 different quotes that I believe help me to have a more entrepreneurial mindset with life, also to have more joy in my life, get more laughs out of my life, and to learn more about myself, which is something I am way too curious about, is seeing like how my body reacts to things and learning from each day in the journey itself. So if, as always, the podcast is helpful for you, I would love if you left a review on Apple Podcasts or just follow along for more episodes coming very soon. I upload every Monday and Thursday. Monday is an interview with some kind of guest that has some perspectives that I think are valuable. And Thursdays is when I just share things that I think would be helpful for the audience at large and might share a couple and tend to get a little more personal. With that all said, let's just jump right into it. The first quote came when I was serving as a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My dad sent me this quote through email. At the time, I was only able to communicate with my family twice a year, Mother's Day and Christmas, at least over video chat. But we were able to communicate weekly through email, and my dad made the most of that. And here's the quote. "There are no traffic jams along the extra mile," and it's by Zig Ziglar. And I think my dad's a very good example of this. Basically, like, most people are going to go that first mile and be like, okay, that's awesome, that is great, and that's it. But what Zig Ziglar is saying is that there are no traffic jams. There's nothing going to hold you back from going a little bit further, which sounds a little bit like a paradox. So you're telling me, like, if I put in more effort, it's going to be easier to do because less people are going to be holding me back. And that's kind of the answer. I mean, I've never had anybody try to stop me from reaching out to a random person at the park. That I did that this week. You know, nobody's going to stop me from that. So, and then it kind of begs the question, how am I making time for that extra mile? Because some people can't even go the first mile, and it's because they don't have time or things are just a struggle, and that's completely fine. But there are no traffic jams along the extra mile. There's always somebody you can talk to or help out, and I've seen that plenty of times. And nobody's going to really be stopping you from that, right? So it's really cool to me because you think of like the most successful people and the people that are like helping out a lot of people. A lot of them are going the extra mile. They're not trying to, I don't know, meet a certain like amount of people they've helped or something. They just keep giving, they just keep giving, they just keep trying, and they don't really pay attention as much. I guess to toot my own horn a little bit, I had a friend or a guy reach out to me today on campus a couple days ago. He's like, "Hey, Dallin, you remember me?" And I was on the way to class. I was almost late to my social dance class. And I'm like, not really. He's like, "Yeah, that makes sense. It was about 2 years ago you talked to me." And I'm like, "And you remember that? That's crazy." And yet, there are no traffic jams along the extra mile. There are so many people you will meet on the extra mile that you will not meet on the first mile. And it's so important that you go the extra mile. I'm not saying like, go crazy so much that in every single thing, but I'm telling you, like, in one thing, you can go the extra mile each day, or you can try to. Maybe you're at a restaurant or something, you just go and talk to the other people. I mean, it sounds weird, but if you have that interest, then go for it, So that's that quote. We could talk about that for a while. The second quote comes also when I was serving as a missionary, and it's a quote that more or less came to my head. Nobody told me it. I believe it was some kind of direct message from God, if you will. Basically, at the time, I was really obsessed about just doing the right thing, right? And like helping the people that I was supposed to help and kind of over stressing. And I think I do that now, honestly. I'm like, okay, I want to help this person the exact way that I'm supposed to help them. And sometimes when you do that, you don't know exactly how to help them. And so you kind of get into this analysis paralysis thing where you're like, oh, there's all these things I could do. You're not sure which one to choose. The point is, in this kind of state of thought I was having, I had this thought come to mind that one prompting followed, and kind of a spiritual prompting, is worth more than 1,000 not followed. I get those spiritual promptings or inclinations or feelings all the time, it feels like. And same thing with like thoughts and ideas. But the ones that I actually follow, those are the ones that generally make the most difference in my life. I'd say when I don't follow or when I don't go through those things, I learn a lot because I'm able to see like, okay, well, why didn't I do this? Was I making excuses? And a lot of the excuses I've made in the past are ones that I completely disregarded before at some point. Maybe in certain circumstances, they seem to be more valid. Like, again, the time question. I don't have time to talk to this person. And it's so easy to do that, but I've really never regretted going and talking to somebody. There's times it doesn't go super well, sure, but I've never really regretted it because, I don't know, I was curious and I went for it. I wanted to kind of go a little bit farther on this one, just like how, just like you could have the very best thought in the world, and that thought like makes you feel happy or it inspires you, makes you want to do more things, but unless you actually do something with that thought, put it into action, it's not going to like change your overall makeup. It kind of just stays in your head. And that's as far as it goes. If you want it to get into your heart, you need to take some action. And the same thing goes with, like, if you have a not good thought or a not good idea. Like, oh, I should go drink tonight. I've never had that thought before. That's never been a temptation for me. I was taught that's just not good. And I've always wanted to have, like, the peak performance I could have in my life. But let's say you had that thought. It doesn't matter. You had the thought. The only thing that matters is if you actually do something about it. That's when it can actually make a really big difference in your life. All of our actions and all of our habit creation, it all starts with our thoughts. And so I wanted to like end this with a little story that has always inspired me. So there's this idea of this guy who's like going to this castle, right? And this guy is looking at this other guy and he sees basically there's this guy who's like in this town, right? And I don't know, this angel or these other guys are talking and they're able to see how many devils that are on this guy. So bear with me for a couple seconds, or hopefully a little bit longer. But they're like, they see this guy that has like a couple devils on him, and one of the guys says to the others like, that guy must be really good because he only has a couple of those devils on him. And the other guy says to him, actually, this guy is really not such a good guy generally because he only needs a couple devils to throw him off track. And then they run into a guy who has all kinds of devils over him, trying to get him to do all kinds of stuff, but he doesn't actually do anything. And one of the guys says to the other guy, it's like, this guy must be so bad. He has devils crawling on every inch of him. And the other guy says to him, no, this is actually one of the most strong guys here because he has all this temptation and he does absolutely nothing about it. So, obviously there's a lot of, like, things you could pull out of that, like, Obviously, there's a lot of things you could pull out of that, but I think one of the big things entrepreneurship teaches you, if you decide to go into it, is the need to like focus on one task until it's completed. Focus on one mission, one thing until it's done. You're trying to like satisfy the customer. You're trying to get the thing out, you know? And there's going to be all kinds of distractions to throw you off all the time. Especially if if you have a really big dream and you really want to go after something, there's always going to be plenty of opposition to hold you back. And so I'd invite you to kind of go back to that first quote. You could say one action followed, or one giant thought followed, is better than 1,000 not followed. So you could have all kinds of ideas, all kinds of perspectives, and they could build you up to your better life, but ultimately you need to take that action. That's how like all these quotes have been able to get so in my head, is because I really try to live by them. I really try to not have them just be thoughts. I like to have them be like companions to help me in my life. I try to think of them all the time. These 3 quotes I've been talking about have probably been like some of the companions I try to take with me the most and keep in mind the most. This second one that I just shared, I honestly haven't been thinking about as much, so I'm really glad that it came to mind for this episode. With that all said, let's just jump to the final one, and this is from, I believe it's Mother Teresa. No, it's not Mother. Is it Mother Teresa? Oh boy. No. It's from Maya Angelou, I believe. This is just a classic one. It's that people might remember what you said or what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. I guess kind of going back to that guy who reached out to me, he must have felt something to like talk to me like 2 years later. I don't remember what I talked about with him. We could have talked about anything. We probably just shot the breeze and he was grateful we shot the breeze together. I don't know. But this quote is so inspirational to me, and I think kind of like the first one, I sometimes blow it a bit too much out of proportion. But there are a lot of people that I can think of, and it just brings me peace knowing, like, you know what? Maybe our paths, they are on complete opposite sides of the spectrum now, and I don't really see them that much. But I'm glad that I reached out to them and helped them out when our paths crossed, and when they needed the help that I could give, or they just needed somebody to help them out. I was kind of there to help them out. And I mean, really quickly, you can think of like the Good Samaritan. There's the guy, you know, he's going and he dies. There's like the guy who's like going to Jericho. Good Samaritan. Basically, this guy, he has a big journey he needs to take, and he falls among oh man. Basically, the story of the Good Samaritan in a nutshell is this guy gets attacked by thieves when he's on a journey, and while he's laying there are 3 people that walk by. One is a guy who says he doesn't have time because he has to go to the temple or whatever. Another one is kind of a similar story. And then the third guy, you know, he's busy like the other ones, I'm sure. But he stops and he helps out the guy and basically saves his life, right? So, I mean, I don't know. For me, I just try to always be ready to help out other people, or try to. There's a quote I try to live by. Here's another bonus quote. It's that if you, like when you run into somebody, it's another one I heard in church. But it's that when you run into somebody and you treat them like they're going through a rough time, you're going to be right like 60-70% of the time. And I find like that's pretty accurate, honestly, because people are always going through something. And as I've been going through my life so far, I've tried to be like somebody who is able to drop everything and help out one of those guys and not worry about the robbers that are in the mountains hiding and could possibly beat me up, but to see the need and try to help out. So, yeah, that is and like when the guy was, saved, like, rescued by the Samaritan, and, the Jews and Samaritans are like enemies, that changes the story even more, like makes it more powerful. He gets to the end and he wants to pay back the guy, and he just can't. And he just is so thankful for the guy. And he lives his life differently too. And there's people that have done that for me, and I try to do that for other people, like help them out so they can live their lives better and I guess see their opportunities differently. I really like being able to help out with that. Because you never know who you're going to run into. And I think there's this like shower thoughts quote. It said like, you have talked to somebody on their last day of life or something, or just something to that effect. And it's true. We never know when we run into somebody what they're actually going through. They could be completely composed in here on the outside, but inside they are dying. They are striving. They're trying to get any kind of help at the time. And it's always really humbling when you run into that. But if you're not like open to that, then you may just pass by them and completely not even realize how much they're actually struggling. Because you're kind of swallowed up in your own thing. And I'm really trying to not be so swallowed up in my own life, but to remember that my life is to give and to serve other people. That's ultimately why I'm here. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from The Incredibles, and it's Mr. Incredible, and he just says, "I'm just here to help." So, yeah. But those are 3 different quotes that like change how I live my life, change how I see things. I think of them as like kind of like goggles or binoculars or something. Now, when I look through at life through those quotes, things make a lot more sense. I'm able to be a little more kind, a little bit more open to things, and go the extra mile, reach out to one more person, and take action on those things I'm passionate about. So again, those quotes were, there are no traffic jams along the extra mile. One action followed, or one big thought followed is worth 1,000 not followed. And people may not remember what you said or what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. I hope this podcast was able to help you feel something good and to hopefully take some action too, because I really want to equip you and help you and have these podcast episodes be helpful, just like the interviews. If it was helpful, definitely let me know at Yield to Dave Dallin Podcast on Instagram or at Dream Chaser Dallin on Instagram. I will definitely respond and be thankful for your reaching out. So, as always, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you guys back on Monday with another interview. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to yield today, and it will be a better tomorrow.